Browns have made some roster moves, placing one player on injured reserve and adding another. So we're going to break that down for you all. Plus, Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry spoke to the media today. They gave us some insight on some injury updates and rehab. So I want to go over all that with you guys, plus a whole lot more. So make sure you stick around to the end of the video too. We've got some shout outs coming for our wonderful loyal viewers. Now, quick PSA. We're going to do a channel meet and greet Thursday, August 1st, 12 p.m. Eastern at Masthead Brewing, just a few days away from now. If you're in the area, want to grab a bite to eat or something to drink and talk brownies, would love to have you stop by this upcoming Thursday, 12 p.m. Eastern at Masthead Brewing. Now, let's start with the roster moves that were made. The Browns put backup center Brian Allen on injured reserve, and they signed offensive lineman Zack Johnson. Now, quick background on Brian Allen. He was signed over the offseason. He was the Rams starting center when they won the Super Bowl, so he was likely going to compete with Luke Whippler for that backup center role for Ethan Posick. Now, you can place, with the new rule, 2 players on injured reserve before roster cutdown day this year and have them return in the middle of the season. Previously, if a guy went on IR before roster cutdown day, they were lost for the year. Now, you can have 2 guys return, so we'll have to wait and see if the Browns want to use one of those 2 spots on Brian Allen. Now, as for Zack Johnson, just some background on him. He was a 2020 UDFA out of North Dakota State, and man, does he look like an offensive lineman from North Dakota State. He started his career off with the Green Bay Packers. He bounced around the NFL, going to the Cardinals, the Broncos, the Ravens, and the Titans. With the Tennessee Titans, he actually did see some regular season snaps, just 4, I believe. So there's not very much information on Johnson. He was with the Birmingham Stallions just a few months ago in the UFL, which I believe they won the championship. So he can kind of come in with some championship mentality and knows what it takes to reach the mountaintop. The offensive line, though, you've got Zack Johnson to this point where I can't even fit his name on the screen, competing with, beyond just like James Hudson, but like he's competing with Akeem Adeniji and Jermaine Ifedi for most likely just a practice squad spot, if we're being honest. Now, Brian Allen going to IR definitely boasts or puts together a better path for Luke Whippler, last year's day 3 draft pick from Ohio State, to crack the 53-man roster, because it felt like he was going to be the Ethan Posick backup this year. And then once the Browns signed Brian Allen, to me that showed maybe not a ton of faith in Luke Whippler for that role, but now he's got an opportunity to claim that backup center job and run with it. But the growing injuries on the offensive line, I'd be lying if I said they don't concern me. We saw last year just how important quality depth is on the offensive line. Joel Petonio had his Iron Man streak end. The Browns went through their top 3 tackles. The only healthy guy for the whole season was Wyatt Teller. Ethan Posick ran into injuries about a third of the way into the year. So hopefully the Browns can kind of kick this injury bug. But it sucks to see because we know how important it is. And for a quarterback like Deshaun Watson coming off shoulder surgery, you want your best 5 offensive linemen on the field from week 1 to week 18. Now, as for the other injuries the Browns have been dealing with, I'll remind everyone again of who's on the PUP list and the NFI list. Nick Chubb, Jack Conklin, Jed Wills. Not too surprising for those 3 guys to start the year on the PUP list. The surprises were Dalvin Tomlinson and DeAnthony Bell. Didn't see those 2 coming. And then on the NFI list, which is non-football injury list, so injuries sustained away from the team, Nyheim Hines and Greg Newsome. Now, we got some updates from Andrew Berry today on some of these players. Now, we'll start with Nick Chubb. The quote was, still has a little ways to go, but overall encouraged to see the progress he has made so far. The fact that Andrew Berry said that they expect Dalvin Tomlinson and Greg Newsome to be back for week 1, but not the same for Nick Chubb, it's a little disheartening, but maybe Andrew Berry is just leaning into, I'll fuel the fire of motivation for Chubb to come back week 1. It could be entire smokescreen season of Andrew Berry putting, this idea out there that Chubb may not be ready for the start of the season, knowing that's just going to motivate and fuel Nick Chubb more to get back for week 1. So I still won't eliminate a Nick Chubb tunnel run out for week 1 with the American flag in his right hand. Now, as for Greg Newsome and Dalvin Tomlinson, Berry saying that they kind of have an internal optimism that they'll be ready for week 1 is great to see, and I'm excited to get them back on the field. But I will remind people that when you've got 300-plus pound defensive tackles starting the season off with recent knee surgery, that's not ideal. when you've got a cornerback that relies on, leg muscles for their twitchiness and their quickness coming off surgery to start the year, that's not ideal. I mean, those are two injuries that you just don't want to see for those specific positions exactly. It'd be one thing if Greg Newsome was coming off like a shoulder injury. Okay, that's not too vital to what a cornerback does, but those soft tissues, like, you need them 100% or close to it. So to already start the year behind the 8 ball a little bit, that's a bummer. And the same goes for 300-pound plus defensive linemen. A lot of weight and stress is put on those joints. To start the year off injured already in that regard, again, just less than ideal. As for Jed Wills, Barry said he is, quote, progressing appropriately. I was hopeful that we would see Jed Wills avoid the PUP list altogether. Now, he has not been wearing a brace or a sleeve. He's been working on the side, so hopefully that's a sign of he's coming back sooner rather than later. We're not even at August yet, so I'm not even thinking about the panic meter for Jed Wills or Jack Conklin, who also we don't have a clear update, but it feels like he's a little further behind in terms of a timeline for a return than Jed Wills. So those are the injury updates we got from Andrew Barry. Overall, injuries obviously suck, and I feel like we're starting to get to the point where it's more of a pattern than just a bunch of one-offs. And that's what has the hair on the back of my neck standing up a little bit. Now, with Dalvin Tomlinson potentially missing some time, it at least comes at a position where the Browns have a ton of depth. Shelby Harris, he was really good last year, I felt like. Quentin Jefferson, a free agent signing, career high 6 sacks a year ago for the Jets. Maurice Hurst, I think, played the best football of his NFL career or close to it last year for Cleveland. He's been rocking and rolling all offseason long, coming off a pec injury, which cut his 2023 season short. And now it gives a runway for second-year man Siaka Ika to try and prove he is worthy of a 53-man roster spot. And then you've got rookie Mike Hall, who comes into a room that was loaded, but maybe now it's got some injuries and the glass is not so hard to break through to find playing time early on in the regular season. Now, before we get to the other injury notes on, unfortunately, guys like Mike Hall, DeJuan Jones, Myles Garrett, I do want to remind everyone of our great sponsor today, which is Game Time. If you love summer baseball and want to catch a Guardians game or a Browns upcoming preseason game or any other major league team in your area, you're going to want to give Game Time a shot. Now, one thing I really like about Game Time is the Game Time guarantee. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets, concert tickets, football tickets, and download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create an account and redeem code CHAT Sports for $20 off. I put all that information for you guys in the comments and description of today's video, but check them out. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Now let's run through the injury roundup for guys not on the PUP list or the NFI list. So Jerry Jeudy has kind of been bouncing back and forth between working on the field and working on the side. Today he was working to the side, which I should add, today's practice was the first padded practice of training camp. There's been some rain in the White Sulphur Springs area of West Virginia, so they were literally squeegeeing the field dry or dry-ish for the team. It was a light 1-hour practice, no offense versus defense, no team drills, so more of just a tune-up for the next 4 padded practices before they head back to Berea, where we'll start to see some more contact. But if you've noticed in the last 4 years under Stefanski, there's very little contact in training camp. But Jerry Jeudy still kind of floating in between the two, but very little concern on my end because the team has expressed very little concern. They know that you don't win Super Bowls in July, you win them in February, so best to have your guys ready for then instead of now. DeJuan Jones was also not working out today, along with rookie defensive tackle Mike Hall. Kevin Stefanski said they're both good. That was kind of the quote we got on their updates, but would like to see them on the field. I just feel like Mike Hall's got an opportunity to run with Dalvin Tomlinson out, and I'd love to see him take advantage of that by being on the field. And for DeJuan Jones, I mean, there's no contact being made, especially no touching the quarterback, so it's not like any quarterbacks at risk, but still, Conklin and Jed Will still being on the PUP list, you like to see as many healthy tackles on the field as possible. Myles Garrett is still kind of nursing a hamstring injury that he picked up during minicamp. I think Cleveland's just being overcautious with this. They know that they don't need to push their reigning Defensive Player of the Year in July. And then Zadarius Smith also not spotted at practice today. Not sure if something that he picked up or if it's a little bit of like a planned rest day, although the team was off yesterday, so I'm not sure if that's the case, but no update on or no insight as to what Zadarius Smith is dealing with. But like I was saying earlier, this is starting to become a little bit of a pattern. And I'm not going to start touching the panic button at this point, but I remember the season of the Browns on the Hard Knocks when Jarvis Landry was speaking to the wide receivers, and he had a great 90-second rant about if you're healthy, you got to be on the practice field because picking up little injuries and sitting to the side, quote, that shit's contagious. And I felt like that was really the beginning of the turnaround from the culture standpoint. And I'm not trying to make a big deal out of guys being injured right now, but I just would love to see as many players on the field as possible because, sure, it's July. You don't want to push those guys. But also, you don't want to create a culture where if you're not feeling 100%, you just stand off on the side. It's football. No one's going to be at 100% for the first or after the first week or so. So hopefully this is not a serious epidemic of guys picking little injuries up and deciding, all right, I'm out for the next couple of practices. Hopefully if they are off to the sides because they have a serious injury and they don't want to risk further damaging the injury or re-aggravating an injury. But I just think back to Jarvis Landry's of this shit's contagious line, and I hope we aren't kind of going back in time a little bit. All right, before we move on to the rest of today's show, I just want to remind everyone our July sub battle, we were paired up with the Ravens Rundown, who had a big lead on us about a week and a half ago. But shout out to all the new subscribers. We have cut that lead down to 9 subs. So if you're watching right now and you want to take down the Ravens this season, it starts in July. That's the old saying. So go ahead, hit that sub button down below. Some good injury news. Jerome Ford returned to practice, and Stefanski hinted at what the cause was for him missing the first couple of practices, which was he had a child. So congratulations to Jerome Ford and his growing family. Very exciting times and day for him. So happy to have him back, but happier that he has become a father. So congratulations, Jerome. Awesome, awesome day for you and your family. Now let's talk about David Njoku for a moment. He spoke to the media today, and they asked him a little bit about his role because the Browns with Ken Dorsey are likely shifting towards more of a spread offense, which I'm not trying to talk above anyone. Sometimes football jargon get a little bit confusing, but spread offense is much more similar to what you see in college football, where you've got 3, sometimes 4 wide receivers on the field, and it is exactly that, spread out, which is not what the Browns' DNA has been under Stefanski, where they usually deploy 1 to 2 tight ends, a couple of backs, and it's a little bit more bunched up. So when you've got a spread offense working, you've got more wide receivers on the field, which means that could take away opportunities for tight ends. So that was what the overall question was kind of, driving towards and what we can expect to see for Njoku this year, who last year had the best year of his NFL career, 882 yards, 6 touchdowns. Imagine what he would have done if he wasn't dealing with burns on his face a quarter of the way into the season. The guy put together, I think, by far, hands down, the best year of his NFL career. But we circle back to the overall idea of the Browns running a spread offense and what that could mean for David Njoku. I think we're going to see the best season yet for Njoku. Spread offenses tend not to be super friendly to tight ends. Just off the top of my head, spread offenses in the NFL, you see a lot of that from the Rams, from the Bengals. And can you think of a Bengals or Rams tight end that you drafted in your fantasy football league in the last 5 years? Probably not. Shout out to Tyler Higbee, but that's about it. But overall, I do think David Njoku is going to find a good role in this offense because Ken Dorsey was in the Bills offense last year that had used a first-round draft pick on Dalton Kincaid. They had 2 legit receiving tight ends, Kincaid and Dawson Knox. And what did Ken Dorsey do? He leaned into his personnel. The Bills, before they got Dalton Kincaid, used some of the least amount of 2 tight end sets. They get Dalton Kincaid, and they jump up to the top of the list. So I think Dorsey's going to look at his strengths along with Stefanski and go, all right, our top overall 3 receivers, probably Amari Cooper, David Njoku, and Jerry Jeudy in that order. So we're not going to sacrifice David Njoku's role just because we're going to use more 3 to 4 wide receiver sets. Got to prioritize Elijah Moore, Cedric Tillman over Njoku. I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're going to see David Njoku used much more as a wide receiver because blocking was never necessarily his strength, although I saw a clip of today, him and Mike Vrabel working on his blocking technique. But I think we're going to see a much bigger wide receiver type of role for Njoku this year. I mean, look at what he's ranked the last 2 years amongst his peers in receiving touchdowns by all tight ends. Tied for 7th with Dalton Schultz, Sam Laporta. Not far behind Mark Andrews or TJ Hawkinson, just a touchdown off from some Pro Bowl guys right there. Overall yards, he jumps all the way up to 5th over the last 2 seasons combined. 1,510, just behind Evan Ingram, just ahead of Mark Andrews and Dallas Goedert. So I feel like David Njoku is a solid to above average tight end that, sure, maybe blossomed a little bit later than expected, but better late than never. And I love the way he has just embodied the city of Cleveland. The fan base loves the Chief. He loves the dog pound. I think he is a candidate for someone that plays his entire career with this team. And I think we're going to get the best year yet from Njoku this upcoming season. So I'll put the benchmark pretty high for him. Over or under 1,000 yards for him. He got nearly to 900 yards last year, so it's very attainable. But will there be enough footballs to go around to feed Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, David Njoku, Elijah Moore? There are a lot of good receivers on this team. Do you guys think Njoku can get to 1,000 yards? I'll feed the fire of motivation and say under from a fueling standpoint and also from a genuine, honest opinion standpoint. I'm not quite sure he'll get to 1,000, but I think get to 900 yards and 6 or 7 touchdowns, and that'd be an awesome year for him. Other news and notes I want to just circle up here. Andrew Berry was asked today about the stadium and what his preference would be. He said he prefers a dome stadium, but his ultimate preference is just a quality resolution sometime soon. He said the dome stadium is better for the offense and for the team, and he thinks it's better for the fan experience, which my 2 cents on this was I used to be team anti-dome, and I made a complete 180 switch after the Saints game in December where the Browns were eliminated from playoff contention. A team from New Orleans who practices indoors and plays in the South went to the chilly shores of Lake Erie in December with negative 20-degree temperatures, and they beat the Browns at their own game. Yeah, at that point, if you're not going to win when it's cold, why be miserable and lose in the cold? Might as well be comfortable if you're going to lose. So I'll take the Dome Stadium any day of the week now. I also want to show some love before we get on out of here to a couple of you guys that commented on a recent video what year you became a Browns fan. By far the most popular, engaging question we've asked on the show. So I just want to give some shout outs to longtime loyal Browns fans that have been watching a lot of bad football, if we're being brutally honest, for a lot of decades. But hopefully they are going to be rewarded for their long patience. So shout out to Francis, BG, 1946. Said he was 91 years old. Incredible stuff. Robert Bailey and Russell watching from 50. We got someone with a cool red truck watching from 1951. David starting in the 54 era. Daniel White from north of the border as well. Pat Werlin, 1954. 1956 coming in. We shift a little bit closer to the late 50s, early 60s. Shout out to Sal, longtime viewer of the channel, tuning in for a handful of seasons now and watching a lot more, going all the way back to 1962. Terry watching from 1960. There are a lot of great names here, so shout out to everyone for exercising more patience than any other fan base in all of professional sports. It's what makes Browns fans one of one. I just spent the weekend in New York City, went to a comedy show at the Comedy Cellar. It's been on my bucket list for a long time. Unfortunately, I was asked what I do for a living, and it's not that I don't like telling people what I do for a living, but telling a comedian, in the shortest version possible, I'm a YouTuber, it never hits well, and it always opens up a whole can of worms of jokes. And so more information was pried out of me. I said I covered the Browns, and the comedian just stopped making jokes. He's like, Browns fans are truly one of one because they have more patience than any other fan base I've ever seen, and by far the most loyal fan base. So Shout out to everyone watching right now. So I figured we'd end the show with this. The first Browns game you ever went to or remember. Like, I don't think it's fair if you went to a game in diapers you have no memory of, and that's the first game you went to. If the first memory you have is a game that you were 6, 7, 8 years old that you really enjoyed, and that's what you think about when you talk about the first Browns game you ever went to. So let me know in the comment section below. If we get some good answers, we can give some more shout-outs on the channel. All right, we got producer Matt Goldman on the 1s and 2s today. Matt, which card do you want to go with?
Jack of Diamonds.
Jack of Diamonds? I like it. I'm going to go with the 5 of Clubs. No. Ace of Hearts. Ace of Hearts. All right, that will do it for us on today's show. Thank you guys for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see everyone tomorrow.